Good morning, mathematicians. We are looking at Wednesday. We are starting with this situation about summertime and Elon Mustard. This says Elon Mustard sent 483,104 hot dogs to Mars last summer. He sent 110,412 in June and 83,105 in July. How many did he send in August? Well, boys and girls, think about it. This is the entire summer, right? In the entire summer, we know that he sent this amount, right? We already know the amount that was sent in June. This is the quantity that was sent in June, right? This is the quantity that was sent in July. We could label that here. We need to know what the missing amount is, and that is how much was in August. So, boys and girls, certainly we can see from this, we are going to be subtracting. We're going to start with subtracting the overall summer amount from the amount that was sent in June. Now, alternatively, I could come to the side and go ahead and add July and June together and then subtract this. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm trying to think what I have seen more of our students doing so that you would be able to check your strategy. Some students will subtract the June quantity, then subtract the July quantity to do two different subtraction problems. Alternatively, as we're doing right here, you could also just go ahead and add June and July and then just subtract one time. That's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Here's my June amount. Here's my July amount. Let's add to find out how much was sent between June and July together. 2 plus 5 is 7. 1 plus 0 is 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. 1 plus 3 is 3. 1 plus 8 is 9. And 1 plus 0 is 1. So this is the amount that was sent. This is the amount that was sent in June and July. We have to subtract that from the overall amount that was sent throughout the entire summer for us to be able to figure the quantity that is left, because that is going to be our August amount. So let's go ahead and let's begin that here. And I'm going to kind of make a little moon here to show this, of course, was my June and July quantities, right? Okay, we have 4 minus 7, which we cannot do. So I'm going to borrow, but notice I can't really borrow from 0. 0 is nothing. So remember what I like to do and have shown many times in our classroom is I like to chunk together the 0 with the nearest digit that is not a 0. Instead of borrowing repeatedly by doing this, I'm going to borrow from this 10. 1 less than 10 is 9. So look, I'm going to make that a 0 and I'm going to make that a 9. And now I'm going to give that group of 10 to the 4. In this way, I have simply borrowed one time instead of repeat, borrow, and regroup. Okay, now let's go ahead and continue. 14 minus 7 is 7. Now we have 9 minus 1, which is 8. Now we have 0 minus 5, which I cannot do. So I'm going to borrow from this 3. That makes that a 2, and that makes this 1 a 10. Now I have 10 minus 5, which is 5. 2 minus 3, I cannot do. So I'm going to make this a 7, and I'm going to make this a 12. 12 minus 3 is 9. 7 minus 9 cannot do. So I'm going to borrow from the 4, making that a 3. And now this is a 17. 17 minus 8, or excuse me, minus 9, which is 8. And then 3 minus 1, which is 2. And now I have my answer. Look, this is it. He sent 289,587 hot dogs in August. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my final answer here. Get in the habit of doing that, boys and girls, because when we have our scrap work over here, I, as your teacher, I want to see exactly what your final answer is. Which of these figures is the final destination of all that problem solving? Go ahead and get in the habit of rewriting it on the answer line to make it very clear after all of your hard work that that's your final answer that you want me to see and check. right? Now, since this does have lots of words here, I also say if your question has words, your answer should have words too. So I'm going to go ahead and write that this number, 2,289,587, and then I'm going to write hot dogs were sent in August. And again, now I have given this number context back to this silly question about Elon Mustard and sending hot dogs to space. All right, let's go to our next question. We have the statue of library, and it had 15,822 visitors on Monday, 23,372 visitors on Tuesday, and 12,156 visitors on Wednesday. How many visitors did they have in total? Boys and girls, I would challenge you to pause the video and practice reading those numbers because reading your number really is helping you to ensure that you are considering place value. And this year, boys and girls, our place values are going to extend to the other side of the decimal point. We're going to learn how to read numbers that have a whole number part, like you've already experienced up to fourth grade, but also a partial value by going to the other side of the decimal point where we will have decimals, right? So we've got to be really great mathematicians at reading these whole numbers. This is a great opportunity to practice that. Now, after you practice that, this question itself is asking us how many visitors did they have between Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday? So, what do we need to do to find that out? Well, we need to add those three numbers together, our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday value. So, let's go ahead and do that now. 2 plus 2 plus 6 is 10. So, here is my 0, carry my 1. 1 plus 2 plus 7 plus 5. Now, I love this because look, this is a group of 10 right here, the 1 plus 2 plus 7. That's a group of 10, and 5 more is 15. Here's my 5, carry my 1. I love seeing so many groups of 10 here. We have 1 plus 8 plus 3 plus 1, but notice, boys and girls, I see a group of 10 here with the 1 and the 8 and the 1. There's a group of 10 plus 3 more is 13. So here's my 3, carry my 1. Now I have 1 plus 5 plus 3 plus 2. Ooh, my brain sees another group of 10 here. Those are a group of 10, and 1 more is 11. So here's my 1, carry my 1, and 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 5. Where does the comma go? 1, 2, 3, comma, and I have that in total there were 51,350 visitors. And in this way, again, boys and girls, I have related my mathematical value to also just good reading of the question and tying it back to the context. All right, now let's take a look. We have two questions today where we're really thinking about angles and measurements. This is our first. Vincent Van Gogh paints the below angle on his painting Starry Night. What is the angle's measurement? Now, boys and girls, in fourth grade, you worked with a protractor quite often. In fifth grade, we really don't have standards that require a protractor. However, we don't want to lose the knowledge that we already have because certainly we're going to be using that knowledge as we think about polygons and angles in fifth grade in new and different ways. But no, at home right now, you very likely do not have a protractor. So one thing that I want you to remember is when you look at like an index card, right? This angle that we see is a 90-degree angle, right? Even without a protractor, I can look at this little note card and I can see a 90-degree angle. Now, when I line that up, and let me open it up so that it'll be very balanced. When I line that up here to this, if I were to draw a line on the other side, this would be a 90-degree angle. This and this is a 90-degree angle. So obviously, I can see that the angle in question is acute, but I need to give a reasonable measurement for I'm not going to ask you to give an exact answer for this because, like I said, you likely don't have a protractor at home. If you're doing it at school, absolutely positively, you can ask for a protractor and measure it with exactness. But when I look at this, it looks to me to be just a little bit less than half of 90, right? 90 might be perfectly right there, just a smidge larger. So I'm going to say that this is about 40 degrees because it's just a little bit less than half of a 90-degree angle, right? So boys and girls, again, when you're doing spiral review at home, if you don't have the tool that you need, if you don't have a ruler, if you don't have a protractor, remember what I'm looking for is always your mathematical thinking. Use that math mind to use what you know, use what you have to give me some thought and some effort because truly, boys and girls, it's really more of that math mind that I'm after, even more than just a correct answer. Okay? So we're going to say 40 degrees because certainly that is a reasonable quantity, even by just considering how it compares to 90 degrees, right? Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump down to the very bottom one because I have another one that is using a similar standard of thinking about lines and angles. Now, this one says that line QR, which is this right here, line QR, is straight. So, what I know about a straight angle is that it is 180 degrees. We learned that in previous grades. Now we're going to write an equation and solve for the angle x. So we have to write this as an equation. An equation has this quantity being equal to this quantity. An equation has an equal sign, and it has something on the left and something on the right that are perfectly equal and balanced. That's what an equation is. So we have to solve for the angle x. Well, what am I going to have over here? I'm going to have the number of degrees that a straight angle has. Well, a straight angle has 180 degrees. And I know that that's going to be equal to 62 plus x plus 40. So let's go ahead and write that 62 plus x plus 40. Dun, dun, dun. We've made an equation. But now I have to actually solve for x. So let's continue this equation. I'm still considering how it relates to a straight angle, but now let's go ahead and combine the 62 here with the 40 here. 62 plus 40 gives me 102, and that is still plus x. X combined with 102 is going to be 180. So in my next step, I'm going to subtract 102 over here, and I'm also going to subtract 102 over here. When I do that, I find this to be 118. 118. Oh, actually, let me switch this just a little bit here, boys and girls. If I have, let's go with this 180 minus 102. I was going off of one of my students' papers. Let's take a look here. If I borrow from the 8, make it a 7, and I give a 10 here, I'm going to have 10 minus 2, which is 8. Then I'm going to have 7 minus 0, which is 7. Then I'm going to have 1 minus 1, which is 0. So here, I misread your work here. This is 78, right? Because I have 180 minus 102 gives me 78. Now, what does that equal? Well, I've really canceled out numbers here. So all I have left is my x. And I know that 78 equals x. Boys and girls, this is some pretty cool work that we're doing that really involves a little bit of algebra too, as we're thinking about an algebraic expression, right, with this variable of x. What does this mean tied back to this context? Well, it means that the angle that x is sitting in really has a value of 78 degrees. Okay, that's what that one actually means. Now we're going to go back up because we have one more mathematical question and skill to think about. This is actually using your rounding skills. All right, so let's do this one now. It says to use the number line to answer the question 63,382 rounded to the nearest. So what are we rounding to? We're rounding to the nearest thousand. Well, which of these digits is sitting in the thousand place? We have one, 10, 100, 1,000. So if this number rounds down, that would round to 63,000 because we're rounding to the nearest thousand, right? If it rounds up, it's gonna round up to one more group of thousand, so 64,000. Now, right here in the middle at the halfway point would be 63,500, right? 63,500. That is just helping us because if my value sits over here, then it's going to be closer to this quantity. If my value sits over here, it's going to be closer to this quantity. So now I have to consider this number 63,382 and ask myself where it would sit on the number line. Well, it would sit over here, right? It's a little bit more than half. So it would be maybe about here to be 63,382. So now I say, okay, is it closer to this or is it closer to all the way over here? This certainly we can see this value is closer to this. In this way, we have used the number line to show that it will round to 63,000. That is how we will answer our question, our final question on today's spiral.